The Moonlit Forest and the Fairy Lights. Once upon a time, in a quiet village surrounded by mountains, there was a beautiful forest. In that forest, there were mysterious lights called fairy lights that would softly glow at night. It was said that these lights would gently guide lost travelers and those with lonely hearts, making them special to the villagers. In that village lived a 10-year-old girl named Sakura. She was full of curiosity and loved listening to her grandmother's stories. Among all the tales, the story of the fairy lights was her favorite, and she would often ask to hear it over and over again. One full moon night, Sakura sat on her grandmother's lap and asked once more for the story of the fairy lights. Her eyes sparkled as she said, "Grandma, please tell me the story of the fairy lights again." Her grandmother smiled gently and said, "Of course, Sakura. But tonight, I'll tell you a special story that I've never shared before. There's a secret about those lights that no one knows," she began. "The fairy lights that appear in the forest aren't just ordinary lights. They are actually lit by fox spirits that live in the forest, who secretly light them at night to guide those who get lost in the woods back home. But you know, those lights shine most beautifully when someone with a pure and kind heart is nearby." Sakura was even more intrigued and asked, "Grandma, what do those lights look like?" It's said that their color and shape change depending on the person's heart. For those with a calm heart, the light appears warm and orange. But if someone has anxiety or sadness in their heart, the light turns blue and cold. And if someone has anger or hatred in their heart, the light turns green and disappears along with a cold breeze. Sakura became even more eager to see the fairy lights for herself, and that night, she couldn't sleep. Unable to resist her curiosity, she quietly slipped out of her bed and made her way to the quiet forest at night. When she reached the entrance of the forest at the edge of the village, she was greeted by a white cat named Shiro, whom she often saw in the village. Shiro seemed to have been waiting for her, as he lightly walked into the forest. Sakura followed him into the dark forest. The forest was silent, with only the sound of leaves rustling in the wind breaking the stillness. As Sakura followed Shiro, she began to feel a little anxious. However, seeing Shiro's white fur faintly glowing in the moonlight, she felt somewhat reassured. As they walked further, a faint light began to appear deep in the forest. Drawn to the light, Sakura continued to move deeper into the forest. Eventually, she came upon a small spring surrounded by several floating lights. These were the fairy lights. The sight was indescribably beautiful, and Sakura stood in awe. The moonlight reflected off the surface of the spring, and the fairy lights floated gently around it. It was a magical scene, as if the stars had descended to the earth. Shiro sat at Sakura's feet, quietly gazing at the lights. Sakura sat down as well and reached out to touch one of the lights. It felt warm in her hand, and a soft orange glow spread around her. It was as if the light was welcoming her. "This is the fairy light," Sakura murmured in wonder. Shiro quietly sat beside her, watching her closely. Sakura snuggled up to Shiro and closed her eyes. The sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the gentle flow of the spring water filled her ears, bringing a sense of peace to her heart. Her grandmother's words came to mind, "As long as your heart is calm, the fairy lights will always protect you." Remembering those words, Sakura took a deep breath. As she did, she felt the tension leave her body, as if the entire forest was gently embracing her. After a while, Sakura slowly drifted into a deep sleep, protected by the fairy lights. In the quiet forest, Sakura had a peaceful dream. In her dream, she walked through a beautiful forest. This forest was even more mystical than the real one, with flowers of various colors blooming between the trees, and birds gracefully fluttering down. From afar, she could hear a soft melody. Guided by the music, Sakura ventured further into the forest. There, she found a small house, and in front of it was a small fox spirit, dancing joyfully. When the fox spirit saw Sakura, it smiled warmly and waved at her. "Sakura, I'm so glad you came. I've been waiting for you," the fox said to her. "Waiting for me?" Sakura asked in surprise. "Yes, Sakura. You have a pure and kind heart, so I've been here waiting to welcome you." The fox circled around Sakura and extended its hand. Sakura took the fox's hand. Suddenly, a brilliant light emanated from the fox's hand, enveloping Sakura. The light was warm and gentle, making her feel safe and at ease. "This is the light of your heart. Your kindness makes this light shine so beautifully," the fox spirit said with a smile. Enveloped in the light, Sakura felt a deep sense of happiness. She closed her eyes and let the light wash over her. Eventually, Sakura slowly awoke. She found herself back in the real forest, where the morning sun was shining through the trees. Shiro was quietly sleeping beside her. As Sakura gently stroked Shiro's head, she recalled the beautiful sights she had seen in her dream. "Just like Grandma said, I was protected by the fairy lights." Sakura smiled and, with Shiro by her side, left the forest. The two of them returned to the village, where Sakura told her grandmother about her nighttime adventure. Her grandmother hugged her gently and whispered, "I'm so glad you're safe." From that night on, Sakura fell asleep each evening thinking of the fairy lights. Remembering the beautiful scenes she saw in the forest and the fox spirit she met in her dream always filled her with a sense of calm and kindness. And even as she grew older, Sakura never forgot that beautiful night's adventure. She cherished the memory in her heart, hoping one day to share the story of the fairy lights with her own children, just as her grandmother had done for her.